Welcome to Next Economy MBA kind of introduction and meeting with the facilitators. Thanks for being here. Just to kick things off, if you wanted to share in the chat, if you have access to the chat, your name, your pronouns, and maybe your location. We get a mute. Thanks. That would be, you're invited to share that. So your name, pronouns, and location that you're zooming in from. Um, and you noted that this will be recorded. So if you have to drop at any time or if anything happens, this will be distributed to you and many others who signed up and submitted some questions in advance. So we're going to be going through some questions. I thought we'd start real quickly with a little bit of an orientation about like who's Lift Economy and like who we are and like what is the Next Economy MBA. And this might answer some of the questions that you've already kind of submitted in advance. So I'm going to share some images to try and orient us. So Lift Economy, we're a worker-owned cooperative consultancy that has this one of those audacious missions to transform the very nature of the economy to work for the benefit of all life. Obviously, that's much larger than ourselves, and probably obviously it's a multi-generational kind of endeavor. It's something that will probably happen beyond our individual lifetimes, but we think it's nothing short of a transformation of our economic system is adequate to actually have a livable future for humanity and other than human life on Earth. I know it's a bold claim, but the existing economy is broken. There's lots of evidence for that. You know, we live in a world where there's 800 million people who are malnourished and hungry, you know, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, or about almost a billion people who don't have an adequate supply of water for basic sanitation or potable water needs. Simultaneously, we have about 6 men now, it changes all the time, that have the wealth as it's measured in the business as usual economy as half the world's people. Things are broken, like really broken in the way the economy works. We're experiencing an ecocidal crisis. More than 50% of wildlife on Earth has disappeared just over the last 200 years. There's 1 million species that are at risk of extinction. And I'm going through these kind of statistics and kind of things that you probably already know pretty quickly. And they're also horrifying. And emotionally, it's a lot to hold. And so just breathing through that, if you're feeling like, ah, God, I know this, but it's just, um, it's obscene. And it distorts our reality and our motivation. But we're living in existential times with climate change kind of disrupting our living patterns through global warming. And so part of we're very influenced by the Berkana Institute and Meg Wheatley and Deborah Fries, and they talk about this model of how systems change. And I'm just going to bring it up here to inform like I'm getting to the next kind of MBA. Trust me, I am. The business as usual economy is kind of represented by this arrow on the top here. It has a lot of momentum. Most of us are born into the context of the business as usual economy. And once we recognize the horrific nature of what the outcomes it's creating, some change efforts are incremental. Let's change corporate charters to include other than shareholder stakeholders like benefit corporations. So let's try and hospice out, if you will. Let's reduce the harm of the business as usual economy. And that's really critical work. Simultaneously, there's some of us who respond to the horror of the business as usual economy and say, we need to radically transform the norms and culture and structures of how all this works. If it's not radical enough, if it's not transformative enough, we'll never get to that possibility of a livable future. And there's sometimes a perceptual tension between these. We actually see an affinity between these strategies. And if you were to kind of place the Next Economy MBA, we work a lot with people and organizations that have midwifery ambitions in this context, meaning transformative aspirations, and they want to they recognize that they're intersecting with, I still need a bank account. My employees, our team, we still have to pay rent. We still need food. How do we manage life in the context of the business as usual economy? How do we intersect effectively when we have these transformative aspirations? And so that's true for Lift Economy as much as it is for the Next Economy MBA. At Lift Economy, we do a lot of technical assistance to a plethora of hundreds now, over 350 organizations, co-ops, nonprofits, perpetual purpose trusts, all sorts of different structures of organizations who are trying to provide needed goods and services to their community, but do it in a way that's in alignment with their values for life. And so we do technical support. We also realize that capital is a really big deal. So we've actually started a fund called the Force for Good Fund, and capital formation is highly implicated in what holds back. So we've developed some knowledge around capital formation and help organizations and philanthropic groups and impact investors with that. We do sharing the stories of what's working. So much of the case stories that are in the Next Economy MBA are just animating our imagination. Like, I didn't even know that was possible. I didn't even know that you could have a permanent real estate cooperative that could make housing permanently affordable, but still allow people to build equity for transferability, for livability, to actually change the landscape of the notion of private property ownership to recommoning housing. Oh my gosh, that's a huge, it's a big idea, and it's possible because it's happening. So we tell stories, we've written some books, but we do some field building around different big areas of the economy that we see as being implicated as needing fixing. Um, we also work on things like the infrastructure, making choices in terms of the culture of humanity to be in alignment with our values easier. And I'm not going to talk much about that today. What I want to talk about is over time, with all these things that we do at Lift Economy as a worker-owned cooperative consultancy and impact organization, is we've kind of landed on 2017, 2016, around that time frame, people were coming to us and say, like, I see this work you're doing, Lift Economy, and I really admire it, and I want to know more, but I'm not yet, like, maybe I've started an organization and I'm trying to grow it, but I want to make sure I'm growing it to the optimal impact outcomes, or maybe I have an idea of something I want to do in the future, and I want to make sure I start on the right foot for how do I organize my Next Economy institution. I have a nonprofit idea. I want to start a co-op, or I want to start a benefit corporation. I want to provide needed goods and services to my community, and I don't want to compromise on my values. Or other people just came to us and said, how do I get this information, but not in a consultative technical service arrangement? So we started something called the Next Economy MBA, which we'll talk about mostly today. And over time, we've realized that the people that have come to it now, hundreds of graduates, alumni, and participants of the program, are deeply inspiring to us. We're learning with the participants, with you, about how collectively we're developing and growing an economy that works for the benefit of all life. And the power of that community is just starting to amplify as more and more people participate. And so growing the community has become core to our mission of people who have literacy and understanding of what's possible and are active in their life and vocation and their calling to bring more Next Economy principles into the world. Now, why an MBA? I just upfront want to say it. The Next Economy MBA, and my team hates when I say this, but it's not accredited. It's about as accredited as Trump University. It's not meant to be an accredited institutional educational offering. The way it came about as the Next Economy MBA is there's a lot of MBA training out there that we've experienced and seen and talked to people, and that kind of trains people to be a manager in a traditional institution. And then there's some green or sustainable MBA programs out there, and we've taught at some of those and know some of the people involved, good people. But essentially, the orientation is the same. It's the information is orienting people to be managerial roles in different types of organizations that are less bad or doing harm reduction. But we didn't find any institutional program that covered the regenerative finance, structured exits, nonviolent communication, racial justice, building racial justice into an organization, self-management, worker self-direction, open book management, things that are core to an equitable economy that works for the benefit of all life, but just aren't taught, or there's no learning that was accessible. So we created this 9-month learning journey. And in a cohort, there's like 60 to 70 or so participants in a cohort. But it's not just a cohort based one. So when anybody signs up for a cohort of the training, uh, the invitation is to become part of a lifelong community. So what that means is if you sign up for one, say cohort 12, which is the one coming up that's starting soon, you can attend cohort 13, cohort 14, cohort 15, any subsequent training that we're offering in the Next Economy MBA, you're invited to participate. And there's a bunch of ancillary programs, which we'll probably talk about in a little bit. And, the people who join, some of them, this was a question that was asked, some are entrepreneurs and they definitely want to start something. They're aspiring to start something. A number of groups, like I've had a co-op for 5 years. I've been a worker owner, and I just want to make sure what are we missing? I want it to be better, easier, more impactful. What can I add on to this? That's another thing. Some people are in career transition. They're like, I'm in the business as usual economy, in finance or retail or some industry, and like I want to transition to something that's more in alignment with my values. What's out there? How do I find out? What do I look for? What can I learn? What skills, what knowledge could I appropriate? And then there's kind of other people who are interested for a variety of reasons, some impact investors and academics and others who are interested in the Next Economy MBA. So these are some of the things that alumni and participants have shared about it, in terms of the outcomes that they want, in terms of increasing their knowledge or confidence and their understanding, and being part of a community, a peer group that holds them accountable to this calling to, have a deeper impact in their community. Some people asked about the curriculum and just the basic outline of it. We have a syllabus which can be shared, and I'll put in the chat when I get around to it here. But the sessions 1 through 6 can be considered like a foundations kind of. What's the business as usual economy? Why is it broken? What would the next economy look like? What principles might inform us transitioning from the existing economy to an economy that works for the benefit of all life? And then sessions 7 through 16 are kind of like, how do we apply those principles, the nuts and bolts, to our organizations, to developing an organization, to growing an organization? And then sessions 17 and 18 are back to the big picture. How do we apply those principles to changing the entire system and culture that we find ourselves embedded in? So that's kind of the arc. These are the titles of the sessions. So it's case story heavy. So we're trying to bring in real life examples of what real humans are doing in different regions around the world, in terms of economic activity, co-ops, nonprofits, affiliated entities, different types of structures and case studies. There's lots of references and resources. They're optional. Some of them are referenced within the facilitated training. There's lots of templates. There's no homework per se. We know way too many people in therapy because of that word. So extra fun is what we call it. So there's extra fun opportunities to go deeper, to apply what you're learning, sometimes through the templates and different exercises. Those are optional, but encouraged. There's racial justice caucuses. Maybe we'll say more about that today when we get through the questions that you've preceded or questions you might be holding. There's affinity groups, special sessions that are optional. And then we have an online, non-commercial messaging platform, a technology tool to stay in touch with both your cohort and the alumni, which actually is maintained and stewarded by a multi-stakeholder cooperative group called the Terran Collective, they were in cohort 3 of the Next Economy MBA. So they're actually part of the training. One of you asked this question preceded, was like, how much of my life energy would this take? Well, the answer is it kind of depends. But there's 18 live sessions that are an hour and a half. The first 2 are 2 hours. There's office hours the same week as the session that are an hour. There's racial justice caucuses, which again, we might talk about, which are highly encouraged, and special sessions, but not required. All the sessions are recorded. So if you're need to miss a session, or from a time zone perspective, it's difficult to join live. Some people only join, oh my gosh, join remotely. I'm clicking on the wrong thing there. And let me go back to it. The answer to the question that somebody asked was, how much of my life energy? So on average, maybe 2 to 2.5 hours a week is what we see over the course of the training. And some of that's in optional activities. So that's over a 9-month kind of arc. The next cohort is starting soon. Early bird registration has expired. In terms of just this logistic stuff, we value accessibility. Some of you had questions about this, so I'll try and address it now. So no one has ever been turned away from participation for lack of financial capacity to participate. So we can work with you to find something that's workable. And if the training is not meeting your expectations for your life journey, you can ask for your money back, and all we ask for is a conversation to learn from you about why it didn't work for you. So there's a money back guarantee. I'm sure I missed 1,000 things. By the way, I'm Kevin Bayuk, he, him, worker owner at Lyft Economy. And I'm going to introduce the other Lyft Economy participants, and then we'll kind of go to some of the questions that you've preceded. Phoenix, I know you can't be with us the entire day today at this session. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Hey, it's Phoenix. Oh, Chantel's here. Okay. So good to see some of your faces. If you want to turn on your video and just say hi and go, that's cool. And if you need to keep your video off, that's also cool. Oh, yay. Uh, it's so good. I mean, I like seeing people's faces, partly because I'm relational, but also partly because that's part of what the next economy is, and why I'm excited about it, is that it gets to be more about us and our energy and our vitality than just about getting things done and survival. And by the way, when you care about things like connection and being there relationally, you can survive a lot better. And so that's actually one of the work I do. We have a lot of actual possibilities of how to change things and make things different. But how do we do the human thing of working together and depending on each other? And so my work is consulting on communication and collaboration, especially startups. How do you make decisions if there's no hierarchy? How do you handle longstanding inequities, historical inequities, and how do you have so I come in and I help with collaboration, I help with DEI, I help with mediations and conflict resolution. So and those are things I'm very excited about because it's bringing our humanity and it can be very rewarding. So yeah, glad to have you all here, and I'll be here for about another 10, 15 minutes. And if you have a question for me, please ask. Yeah. Turn it over to Erin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Erin. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm calling in from unceded Ohlone territory, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area, just a little bit north towards Richmond. And my particular specialization in terms of facilitating the course and the client work I do, I work with land stewards primarily, and I work with folks that are really actively trying to address nature-based climate solutions and rebalance our climate through a myriad of different ways. And then on top of that, I also work with wealth holders, folks with family foundations or funds to help move some of those resources towards nature-based solutions and just transition, particularly towards Indigenous-led, women-led, and BIPOC-led land stewardship projects. So I do, I'm mostly at Lyft Economy in my desk job, but I also do land stewardship in the bioregion that I live. I steward 11 acres and have 8 sheep, and also steward a small dairy collective to meet our caloric needs locally from goat's meat and goat dairy. And last but not least, I might have to step out for a few moments during this call because I have a 4-month-old daughter, so I might need to feed her. But so happy to be here. And Sean, how's your internet connection?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, on limited bandwidth here today on my phone, but happy to be here. Sean Barry, he, him. I'm on Lenape land in the mid-Hudson Valley near Kingston, New York. And yeah, I'm on the MBA facilitation team and happy to be so. I work a lot with worker-owned cooperatives, also companies looking for ownership or leadership succession strategies is kind of a current theme for me. And yeah, I tend to work on vision, culture, strategy, operational systems, kind of the bulk of the training. So yeah, very, very happy to meet you all and happy to be here. And I think I can pass to Tadan.
Averejoro samzu kwahusi tadun tumorutsu dan sumasuga giza coastal Miwok Zan Pomo land. My name is Tadun and I am your Next Economy MBA community steward. And I live here on Southern Pomo and coastal Miwok territory in Sebastopol. And I was on this webinar a year ago, joining Cohort 10. And now I am working for Lyft. So just a quick about my backstory is I was trying to start a business that was aligned with my values, but I didn't have a community, and I was also not trying to exploit people while building my business. And I struggled, and the business failed. And so I joined Lyft Economy to learn how can I start a business that aligns with my values, where I'm taking care of the people in my community, and I'm able to survive and pay my bills. And after I was working for Lyft, I was working on fires as well, wildfires, and then Lyft reached out to me and asked me to join the team. And so my whole purpose is really to support you on your journey and whatever you need throughout the course, and not just during the course, but afterwards. We're really building lifelong relationships here. So when you join the Next Economy MBA, like Kevin was saying, you have like a lifetime membership, and this is a community that we're hoping, it's not just like a sprint for 9 months. This is a community that we hope to build and nourish and support for the rest of our journeys in the days ahead. And right now, I'm going to pass it to one of our very special alumni, Chantel.
Yay, Chantal!
Hi, nice to see you all. I'm Chantal Suarez Avila. My pronouns are she, her. I'm originally from Chicago, moved out to California, Southern California a few years ago, along with starting a business. So lots of change in my life, and I've been trying to navigate all of that by centering my values. And so I partner with BIPOC nonprofit leaders on their fundraising strategies and wanting to use more community-centered practices with those fundraising strategies, because we know, right, a lot of communities, especially BIPOC communities, are not getting resourced to do the amazing work that they're doing on the ground. And I came across Next Economy MBA by also learning more about just transition and how do I integrate that framework, those principles into my own work and the work of my partners. And then eventually got to meet the wonderful people at Next Economy, and was really happy with getting the opportunity to just recently complete my Next Economy MBA. So super, super, super appreciative of that experiences and meeting wonderful people across the country. What else can I say? The tools available in the program, I'm still using them to this day. And so constantly referencing the education materials and of course the network, right? Like I think Phoenix, I really love what you say about connection. I think this is a network and a people in a program that very much values that, and so I feel it, and I try to reciprocate that back however I can, even being with you all today. So yeah, I'll stop there and let someone else go. Tadong, if you want to help me out.
Yeah, so if maybe just pass one question that came in for Phoenix before you have to go. If you wanted to address, someone asked if you offer any one-on-one coaching for BIPOC women in the workplace.
Yeah, in fact, I had a call with someone just the last week, coming out of West Africa. She's starting a business there and wanted support with myriad of things like how do you have employees and not do it as business as usual, but also make sure that they're that it's solid and it's dependable and that there's accountability and all of those things, and also with how to balance work. Startup, it's easy to end up working a lot. So yeah, so there's I definitely do that, but there's also other resources. Like everyone on Lyft is available for one-on-one support, and then we have packages for people who want more engagement with the support. There's also the BIPOC caucus, where some of the things that are special to BIPOC, we get to talk there about those things. And yeah, and then let me see, I had written some notes about this question. Yeah. Yeah, next economy living, where because I mean, depending on what this person is curious about, one of the questions we get a lot is, well, it's not just about my business. I want to be living these values in all parts of my life. So we're starting to do some work there. And then, of course, there's the classes that I offer, cultural offerings, where it's about how to bring these values into the workplace, how to handle things like giving feedback from a place of care, but also being authentic. So there's lots of different resources, and I'm curious if anyone else on the team could add if there's anything I missed. Okay. Good. Well, before I leave, I want to say one thing that I think is special about this program is that you have some traditional MBAs where, it's about, I need to get this average and need to do these tests. And we're not about passing tests. We're about, can you get your business going, or can you have your dream? Can you make your workplace more conscious, bring in these values? And so it's really about getting you to use this. So it's a very different paradigm than the traditional educational systems that we're used to. We want you to succeed. We want everyone to succeed. There's no bell curve. And that's why we have the lifetime membership. I mean, we do personal consulting. We all do things to help. And then we were like, well, how do we get more people in the door? How do we make this more economically feasible for more people to know these skills? Because what we want is the next economy to make that manifest. So you're not just joining a program, you're joining a movement. And I welcome you with whatever decision you make. Erin?
Can I just piggyback on that? And then Tadung, if it's okay, I'll ask Chantel a question while we've got her. I just wanted to mention that I think that lifetime membership is really key, because I like to think of this as a cyclical learning journey rather than a linear one, because there's so many topics we cover throughout the 9-month arc, but then we have this beautiful movement building that happens where alumni will come back to the 9-month training that new participants are in and see the struggles with the concepts in new ways and ask questions that help everyone's learning advance. And really this cyclical nature of it is at any given point in your journey, you'll be dealing with strategy in a different way. You'll be dealing with visioning in a different way. And so continuing that as an emergent cyclical process, an iterative process, is really core to what motivates me to get up and teach this course and be a part of the journey.
If I can actually, real quick, before we pass to Chantel, for this very cohort, we had one of our alumni, Michaela, was a few cohorts ago, and but she was at an early stage in her process of doing this really incredible Indigenous land back stewardship. It's so amazing. They'll have to speak to it themselves, but Michelle, who's actually on this call, is part of 4 board members from Native Roots Network that'll be joining Cohort 12. So just to show, like, you can join now and then bring your whole team in later, like at different stages of your growth and your development. So, but yeah, Chantel, I would love to hear a question we got about what would be one piece of advice you would give someone considering enrolling in the program.
Yeah, I mean, I was a participant that already had a business, and like the colleague said, folks in sort of different life stages. And so I already had a business, and I think for me, I had thought about an MBA program in the past, but where I am now, I could feel that I've been leading a lot, making more decisions with my values in mind. And I could feel just like a lot of resistance to a traditional MBA program for many reasons, from like, it costs a shit ton of money. Like it can take, like financing, it can could potentially be challenging. I don't know if I'm going to learn the type of frameworks that I am really interested in. And so there was just a lot of, for me, there was a lot more what ifs, and I'm not sure I'm going to get the experience I'm looking for in a traditional MBA program. So when I found Next Economy MBA, just on the website itself, before like any of these information sessions, I could feel there's just a lot of alignment around language, ideas, how I want to run my business, how I'm trying to figure out how to run my business to create like less harm in our world. And so I just felt like we were speaking the same language, and that just helped me make the decision, like, yes, I see a lot of alignment and I want to learn with folks who have been doing this for a while. I don't know if any of you are experiencing this, but as I continue to like live my life with more of my values, I'm finding more of my people and community. And so I think this is like, again, a program and experience and network that's going to help you propel you in the way that you want to go, and however that's going to look like for you.
Thank you much, Chantel. Yeah, so if there's we have a number of questions that a number of you shared with us beforehand, but if there's anything coming up right now that you wanted to ask maybe Chantel or Phoenix before they had to go, that's present for you, happy to hear those. Otherwise, we can move on to the questions that you all sent ahead of time. So feel free to drop it in the chat or come off mute. We'd love to hear from you.
Hey, everybody. My name's Cam. I use they, them pronouns. Thank you so much for this session. I just had a quick question that anyone can speak to, but I guess, Chantal, I'm curious, since you just went through the program and are also based in California, I'm not sure how this would work, so maybe this answer is just a flat no, but are there any ways that like the program engages with local businesses or local communities? I know you mentioned like a lot of case studies in terms of what real people are doing, but are there opportunities for like site-specific like local engagement where everyone is in the world?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can add to what like Lyft team might want to share. I know I met a few of my own peers in my program, but I think that has a lot to do with like, I think there's people that just genuinely want to like support and connect, right? And so I think through these affinity groups, there's a lot of good communication to Dog being one of them, who's like constantly sending communication around like these are some businesses in the area and they're having these events. And so it's kind of like on us to just also make sure that like we're meeting folks, we're supporting folks, we're getting to know folks. But if the Lyft team wants to just share anything else that I obviously don't know, but I think there's a lot of opportunity. And then it's also just being proactive and supporting each other or however we can, especially if we share a certain region, right?
And I think at core, at heart, many, if not most of our alumni are very conscious of that kind of bioregional localized approach. And we definitely cover that in the first 6 sessions around, why are we thinking in terms of bioregions for economic transition? And so especially in the San Francisco Bay Area, but certainly in these sort of pockets of alumni that we have from Atlanta to the Midwest, certain areas of the Midwest, Chicago, Hudson Valley, New York City, and then of course global regions as well. We have some alumni in Australia, we have some alumni in the UK, in Mexico. So globally as well, there's sort of these areas where people are really focused on diving deep around local business development and support, and certainly building their own local businesses.
Yeah, I'll add that that was one of the main reasons that Lyft created a role like this role, my community steward role, was specifically for this, is coming out of COVID. I know that many of us struggled with reestablishing those social connections that were so strong prior to that. And it's just a completely different world. And so this year, yeah, we're talking about maybe in March having a Bay Area gathering, like a potluck in April. We're definitely April 3rd. We're going to have one in New York City. And so it's something that we're just starting to reestablish. And that's really the dream. One thing that we're hoping Hilo can serve is that it has like a regional map, or it has a map that shows where everybody is. And really the dream is that like this really becomes like a locally self-reliant company or like network, and anywhere you go in the world, or if you have any services or offerings or needs in a specific bioregion, that this community can be that kind of that source for that type of community building and those needs. So definitely an aspiration and a dream, and we hope to only strengthen the in-person connections. Thanks so much for coming, Phoenix.
Yeah, take care.
Thanks for that question, Cam. Yeah, anyone else?
Yeah, I was wondering if anybody on the Lyft team had experience in coaching, because I can see just looking over your bios, like a lot of things I'd benefit from with a little bit of extra goal setting and follow up, and just especially around fundraising and building networks and building partnerships with nonprofits. It seems like something a lot of y'all have done. So just wondered if that's something y'all have considered.
We're actually considering offering that as additional support to both our alumni community, but also we're contemplating playing around with small cohort coaching peer support groups. But certainly there is a lot of ad hoc coaching that happens throughout the training, particularly if I'd point to office hours. That's a great place to bring your key questions. It's literally 60 minutes of an open space that happens every other week. And a lot of coaching happens during that time, and the rest of the cohort and alumni community gets to benefit by attending or watching the recordings of that and learn from the coaching that happens with your specific questions that you bring to office hours. Did that help, Stephen?
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Great. It's like Adam.
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
Hey, this is Sean. I was just going to add, just responding to Stephen, that many of us are actually have taken coaching training, and myself, I'm personally receiving coaching. So it's definitely part of our background and methodology. But it's best when it's invited, right? So that's why it's great to respond, like Aaron's saying, on office hour questions and such. And then, as Kevin said in the introduction, we're just available also. Besides all the structured formal stuff, we're also just available, and we often do get contacted by current and alumni, and just checking in and supporting their projects and what's going on. So it's definitely an active part of the our what I see as our community engagement. We love being asked and involved.
And I'll add our affinity groups and our racial caucuses both have can feel like a very coaching like atmosphere that are on specific interests, I'd say, because they're smaller groups meeting around a shared interest, and it's all about kind of people coaching each other really on figuring out different stages where people are on their journeys. So we have one regenerative finance, regenerative agriculture, building resilient communities. We just started one on arts, media, culture and journalism, and economics for emancipation, and then our BIPOC and white allies caucuses. That's honestly, that's one of the most healing things I get to participate in on a monthly basis. Because there's many opportunities for that. So Adam.
Hey everybody. I love the whole concept of this program. It looks like, from what I've read so far and just hearing everyone talk, that it's very geared towards entrepreneurs or business owners. And although I have technically incorporated a public benefit corporation, realistically, the next step in my career is probably going to be as like a manager or VP at a company. And so I was wondering, does the program kind of talk to people who are trying to influence a bigger organization, or do you have to run the whole show to implement these great policies?
Maybe I'll start, and then Aaron, if you want to jump in, and Sean. Thanks, Adam. Great question. A number of participants in the training are, I would describe, in like career transition. They might have their own solopreneur kind of option, but they're looking to find a place. Oftentimes, they're not looking to. Let me make one distinction. I'm going to choose my words carefully. We can be sometimes cynical about our ability to influence, let's say, Halliburton or ExxonMobil, but those who are looking for managerial roles in a benefit corporation or something that's in alignment with their values, maybe even like Unilever, still could be a multinational, but they're generally oriented towards pro-social types of outcomes, either rhetorically or in action. There's definitely people who take the training who are oriented there, and I would say a lot, but not all, of the content of the training, especially sessions 7 through 16, would be applicable to facilitating leadership work in teams that could be nested within a benefit corporation or even a business as usual kind of corporation. So in office hours, it's frequent that a question will come up of like, well, okay, here's my situation. There's, the board has said this and the C-suite is saying this. I'm, a vice president or senior vice president, or whatever. What influence could I do to actually do open book management or transparency or whatever the thing might be? And so navigating those types of nuances are things that kind of come up, especially in office hours. But the core content, what another experience I've heard is you might find that there are things that are immediately applicable, things that are aspirationally applicable, and probably things that you might need to be earlier in the process of development of the organization. A good example would be the structure of the organization itself. It's hard to influence that from an organization with a lot of momentum. It's possible. There have been changes. We can point to case stories where organizations have kind of embraced different structures like self-management, but sometimes the the incorporation structure, the legal entity structure, that kind of thing, that's pretty hard to undo depending on your positionality. That's how I'd say it. So there's a mix there, Adam. Aaron, John, anything you want to add?
I think you captured it, unless Adam has follow-up.
Yeah, how'd that land for you, Adam?
Oh, it's good. Yeah, I mean, most of my career I've been an entrepreneur, and although I get listened to, yeah, there's a lot of inertia. So just curious. Thanks.
I just want to add very quickly, Adam, in my cohort last year, I had a colleague who started a sort of a senior role at a large tech company. And so like he wasn't necessarily like starting his own business, but like had the like wanted to have I don't know, I can't speak for him, but he was very engaged and was one to always say like I'm in an operations role and trying to figure out how to integrate some of these principles and tactics into my role, my leadership, and my company operations. And so it was neat to also hear someone else's experience in a different role and in a different environment, trying to like integrate these approaches, right?
Thanks for that. Yeah. These are great questions. We're kind of going through some of the ones you've already shared, but any others from folks who are off camera? Haven't been able to ask a question yet?
You don't have to use the hand. You can just, yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I went for it. Hi, everyone. This is more of a logistical question. In terms of the class sessions, how interactive are they? And if there's 60 to 75 people in a cohort, how many might be live on the call? And I'm also kind of thinking to my work schedule and knowing that I'll have to miss a session and how much is lost watching it recorded versus live. So just kind of, if anyone could speak to that, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, usually we have about 35 to 40 live. Sometimes it can be lower, like in the 20s. And a lot of folks are in a position where they're, just because of other obligations, they need to watch the recording afterwards, but then we'll engage on high-low or send in questions through the office hours request form. So it's actually been quite a balance, and we do really value the live interaction during the course. That's why every cohort is so different, because even while we're presenting the material, we're asking for questions that are live for folks that are, engaging with what we're talking about out in the real world. And then each session also has at least one, if not two, breakout sessions. So you get an opportunity to be in small groups, 2 to 3 participants, and really digesting and metabolizing the information in real time. And I think we've played with sometimes recording at least one room of those breakout sessions, so that if you can't join live, you can at least witness that one breakout's deliberations as well of the material. Did that answer your question, or does this?
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Anything to add, Lift team, that I forgot? Okay.
Yes, we think it's important to use your body. So we take dance breaks during the live events in addition to the breakouts. And then we definitely, as Aaron was saying, we would, prioritize the engagement and interaction. So sometimes we don't actually cover everything on the agenda because we're responding to the curiosity with the participants. And we kind of prefer it that way. And so like the disclaimer is, hey, if there's something on the agenda that you really wanted to know about, we'll cover it at office hours if people ask. But so we think
Might have lost Sean there. But yes, we do dance breaks.
Thanks so much, Chantel. Really grateful to have you here. So wonderful to see you. Appreciate you.
As Chantel's dropping off, I might try and weave her sign out to another question. Chantel's an example. Some people asked, one person asked, like, I might have a consulting business as a solopreneur. Is that an appropriate type of business for the training? Just as like providing service-based consulting support. And that's Chantel's an example of like a person who has that type of service-oriented business. So that's pretty common. I mean, Lyft Economy itself is tech. I mentioned in the intro does provide technical assistance and consulting, and a lot of the content we go through in the training. Thankfully, we've tried it on ourselves, so we've applied it to our own organization, and so we can speak to direct experiences about the applicability of the content to support service-based and consulting organizations, as amongst others.
We have other preceded questions we could go through if folks are interested, unless there's questions alive for folks on the call right now.
Yeah, I propose we go through the questions, and then anytime it comes up, drop it in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll jump over to your question. But we'll just go through the preceded questions until that comes up.
Do you want to kick us off, Tadung, with the in-person connection opportunities question?
Yeah. So someone asked, are there opportunities for in-person connection during the course? So in the past, they definitely we've done bioregional, and then to kind of loop back to the question that that Cam was asking, it's not explicitly part of the course. There's not like you have to travel to somewhere to take a certain class. The class is entirely virtual. And that's the dream and the goal is to really foster like in-person gatherings. Sometimes they just happen with the alumni, they self-organize, like happened in San Diego in December. And then sometimes we on the staff support with organizing those gatherings. So anytime, and that's my role, and really that's my dream, and that's like what I want to do most of all is hang out with everybody in person. So anytime you want to hang out in person, like let me know, and then we'll try to make it happen any way we can, and just we'll connect with alumni that are there and cool people, and yeah, we'll make it happen. So all right. I think the next question we have is, will we learn about B Corp certification? Let's see, Sean, are you able to answer that?
Maybe. Oh yeah, Sean, is your connection back?
Can you hear me? I can try.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes, we cover B Corp, but we also cover them in the context of what are all of your kind of entity structuring options. B Corp is, of course, is not itself a structure, but it's a third-party certification. But we do cover it and mention it. We also cover benefit corporation, which is slightly different. And then many of the case story organizations that we feature are themselves B Corp, including ourselves, Lyft Economy. But it's not, a super deep dive on B Corps. Although we've had special sessions on B Corps when we've had, those requests from participants. So yeah, it's covered. And like, if you're really interested, we can go deeper. We have, arguably two of the world's leading experts on B Corps, Ryan Honeyman and Emmy Allison, and myself. I'm the third person on our B Corp consulting team. So we are definitely very actively engaged and knowledgeable about the movement. So, and that's just like a good example of how we respond to interest in the program, as we can kind of adapt the curriculum to the interest level.
Great. Next question, are there practical sections of the MBA, such as volunteer hours, consulting projects, where we can start practicing what we learn? Maybe Aaron, you can answer this one.
Yeah, sure. So the practicum part of the course is in both the extra fun assignments. So after every session, you'll get an invitation. We call it extra fun, not homework. And the extra fun is if you want to fill out that form or bring some of the questions that we've seeded to you to your work with your organization. And I think that we would like to do more and more of this. There's also some informal stuff that happens with alumni grappling with kind of real-time practical situations and connecting and supporting one another. But definitely we want to expand this.
Right.
Maybe I'll actually build on that real quick. One way we're hoping to expand on it is in the sessions we have, it was mentioned before that there's like every session has a breakout group, group breakout, some multiple breakouts. This is all in addition to the dance break, but in the breakout, that's a place for synthesis and integration. We provide a hypothetical example to use for the breakout exercise and for the discussion and the deliberation of the process of like working through it in a small group. But we always encourage or you could use your own, or you could bring an organization that you're working on to that breakout group. And so that's the current level of formality we have to be able to have participants provide consultative services to other participants in the cohort. But we're working on maybe even formalizing that a little bit more of knowing, because some people are coming to the cohort with a project already they're working on or entrepreneurially developing. And some people are like in a career transition or wanting to support or gain knowledge or literacy. And so that matchmaking thing is something that we want to do more of and be more formal about over time, including the alumni, like Erin just mentioned.
All right. Next, is it possible to apply what we learned soon after the program and start reverting the extractive economy we live in a self-sustaining fashion? Kevin, you want to take that?
Sure. Yes. The intention of the training is to provide literacy about what's possible and resources, references, templates, and tools to be able to apply it immediately, depending on your context. And so the dependent, again, I just mentioned people are coming to the training from a different context in terms of their vocation, their calling, what they're doing, their kind of economic activity. And so some things will be applicable immediately to some participants, and some things might depend on what their next step is, and then they might be able to apply certain things. It sounds vague and abstract, but in terms of like the intersection with the extractive economy, the business as usual economy, and how do we sustain to meet our needs, I just want to, whoever put this question, just validate the challenge there. The pressure, the stress, the business as usual economy doesn't provide for a deep sense of personal security for anybody. And so it can be really challenging to find what depending on privilege positionality, like what risk tolerance do you have to be able to dive into something new or commit your life energy to something that's more radical, transformative, but maybe doesn't have the reciprocity or reliable reciprocity to reliably meet your needs. Some people, based on their context and privilege and positionality, might have the capacity and risk tolerance to do that, and other people might have to be more gradual and incremental in terms of aligning their calling and vocation with their values. And these are not simple like equations or formula or algorithms. These are complex personal life decisions. That's why in session 6 of the Next Kind of MBA, we started introducing this personal life design because aligning your life and the ways and patterns by which you meet your needs has massive implications for what is possible vocationally. Aaron, I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't want to share too much, but like Aaron is an example of like a hero, in my opinion, of somebody who has made choices in their life design to relieve the need, living in a tiny home in a way where there's a service orientation to the land arrangement. So Aaron's cost of living in the San Francisco Bay Area is a fraction. A cost of living for housing is a fraction of what other people, or maybe I don't want to put Aaron on the spot. Tadong, maybe you can share where you are right now as an example from your amazing life design.
Yeah, it's so right now, kind of do like a quick tour. This is a tiny house that Lyft Economy used some of their profits to build as a experiment of alternative forms of compensation. And so instead of, thinking of just like, oh, giving you more money so that you can give it to some corporate landlord, what if we build one of our team members a tiny house that they can live in? And then out there, you can see those are solar panels. So got 16 solar panels out there. So running completely off the grid. So it was about like a 80% reduction in housing costs for me to go from living in a 3-bedroom in an urban environment to living out here for $750 a month, no utilities, which is just like, so that's very like life-changing for me. It changed my whole family's trajectory. So not everybody has that access and that privilege, right? But that's, if we can start dreaming that, right? Of like thinking of those things, that's been the thing that I've really what has been like life-changing for me of like entering in this community is just having the ideas, right? Because I think that's something that the business as usual, capitalism, traditional MBAs is like a poverty of imagination. It's just like, oh, it's all about like how can we get the highest amount of profits for our shareholders at the expense of like short-term profits, at the expense for like all life on this planet. But you don't really hear of those alternatives. And this is like every single week you're getting to hear about people. It's not just theoretical. It's like an actual case story of people building this in real life and living these things. So that's yeah, that would be my answer to that. Right.
Sean or Aaron?
Oh yeah, Sean.
Yeah, we can continue. Just seeing if Sean or Aaron wanted to contribute, but it's okay. We can continue on.
I think Aaron was on Azita.
Had to step away. Okay. Okay. No worries.
Just a quick question is like, I live in Mexico City, Mexican born, no nationality. Can I register? Anywhere near the world, if you have an internet connection, you can join this program. And so I'm just gonna drop in the chat. One of the cohort members that just registered this week is Dalmas Tiampati, who's at the Maasai Center for Regenerative Pastoralism in Kenya. So they'll be on the call. We've had folks all over right now in their cohort. We have folks from the UK, Canada, Australia. So the time zones can be a little tough, but they like wake up at 5 a.m. and like come to classes when they can. It's pretty amazing. So it really is like international solidarity because these things are applicable all over the planet. It's like a lot, some of the nitty-gritty business stuff is is because the majority of folks are here in the so-called US. But in terms of building a culture, and so many of the lessons are applicable anywhere. So yes, you can register. We'd love to have you. Next, I'll just take a pause. Anyone on the call want to raise their hand or come off mute?
I had a quick question. I'm curious, like it sounds like you're in your 11th or 12th cohort, which is amazing. I'm curious like how the curriculum, if it's changed at all, how it's changed, and what those like conversations at Lyft look like to like respond to a rapidly changing and terrifying world.
You want to take that, Kevin, or you want me to?
What, you want to start? No.
Yeah, happy to. I love that question, Cam. I love that you're, it feels just alignment hearing you ask it in the way you did. The curriculum has changed dramatically, much of it by the brilliance and wisdom of our alumni community, seeing things that the facilitators weren't seeing. And so, for example, one of the principles we cover in the course is called movement building, and it's essentially asking that any next economy organization align to their role in movement building and fostering that systems change. And there's such a myriad of ways to do it. We unpack it a little bit more in our book and during the course. And that was a direct dialogue that happened out of a live session around, hey, this feels like a missing piece. How can we have next economy organizations without that movement building? Other examples of pushback and shifting has just been, we've been so fortunate to have consistent increased commitment to anti-oppression as it is represented in the course. And so we've had dialogue around racialized capitalism and how that shows up, and how we have to use more of those terms and more of that language earlier on in the course, and in a more holistic and integrated way. And there's there's other instances, but those are the two that come to mind. Dance breaks. Arts integration would be another one, where we had some folks from the arts community come in and say, hey, it's a lot of like cerebral information, and if we aren't bringing in the music of the movement builders and the leaders, we're missing out on a heart piece. And so those dance breaks, we have such an amazing song list of the movement makers, the culture creators that are bringing forward these principles through movement and art and beauty and song.
A couple of things that I'll add, but you covered it, Aaron. Both the content and the container have changed, including like silent room breakouts for different accessibility needs of learning. As an example, we have a feedback form for every session. So we've received over 1,200 individual feedback comments, and we analyze them weekly for patterns for modifying the session forthcoming and modifying the session that just passed for the next cohort. So some of the modifications are subtle. Some of them are, like Aaron pointed out, a few examples of the larger shifts. But we take adaptive feedback very sincerely. Thanks, Christina. Thanks, Aaron.
Wonderful. Maybe add this next question. I'm interested in Indigenous sovereignty and Black power building through community wealth models like co-ops and land trusts. How does this program center Native and Black economic models? Kevin?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I suppose the word centering might be subjective, so I'll share what we do in terms of our intention to center those models. Actually, maybe I'll start by saying that's like core to some of the framing of the whole thing. We use the term next economy purposefully. For example, there's a great group called the New Economy Coalition, and I really respect their work, and they're doing movement building. But what we found, both through feedback and through our lived experience, that many of the principles and practices for meeting human needs in ways that benefit life, both structurally and in operation, are actually really old. In fact, they're embedded in indigenous wisdom traditions and lifeways, and in from oppressed and marginalized communities, Black community, other people of color in a mythical white supremacist world. And so our intention to center that which has been working in the past and works now, but is largely unseen. One way we do it is through the case stories and examples. So we audited the case stories and examples that we share to make sure that we are attending to the reality that so many of the inspirational models are coming from and operated by Native and Black community economic models. Examples would be Ground Cover Atlanta is a project that the Guild Atlanta and their kind of ground cover fund. It's a community-owned, multi-stakeholder land holding fund and entity for transferring land stewardship to communities who are at communities of color, Black community in Atlanta, who's under massive threat of displacement and continued exploitation and oppression, and providing a means for community wealth building for the residents and operators of those properties. It's an amazing model, and it makes it into our case study for both how it achieved financing and how it operates. The East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative, that's another housing model, doing anti-displacement work in coastal California in the East Bay of Northern California, Oakland area. The Anishinaabe Agriculture Institute is another case story that we talk about. And one of our LIFT clients, actually, we've done some work with Winona LeDuc and other members of the Ojibwa Anishinaabe tribes in Minnesota area around White Earth Nation in developing and this will sound so jargony, so I hesitate to even say it, but if you've tracked with me, a vertically integrated, indigenous-owned, multi-stakeholder, cooperative, hemp from seed to garment economic model. And so it becomes a case study to share about indigenous economic sovereignty initiatives with multiple stakeholders and collective decision-making for community wealth building from communities that have been extracted from and displaced from their homeland. So those are just a couple case stories that make it into the training. And that's one way we try and center that and make sure that there's humility around things like, emergent things that are, doing their best, but are white-led. Things like the B Corp movement Sean mentioned earlier. We also try and make sure to contextualize and critique the things that are emergent, but not. So we offer up a critique along with being affirmative of the critique, acknowledging lines of identity and what things reify a domination culture world and what things dismantle a domination culture world. So throughout the training, whether it's through case studies or through practices, we try and highlight where they're coming from, even if the author of that book is a white man, which happens way too much. We try and make sure to acknowledge where the wisdom and life ways and experience lives and came from. So those are a couple things that come to mind. Sean, anything you want to add?
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, some of our framing, just building on what you're saying, but just like looking at like the distinctions between Eurocentric worldview, leading to colonialism, and then kind of some themes of indigenous worldviews being much more connected, of course, to ecology and people. And so using those as reference points, similar to where our conversation was going with next economy living and simplified things. Not everybody's on board with modern capitalism, right? And thankfully so. And so there are still some intact cultures, and so like Kevin's saying, just really holding that with a lot of reverence, and whereas that's not seen, in terms of like economic academia, economic thought, I think is recognizing that, whereas we see that as maybe more significant than some of the modern economic models in terms of providing real accessible high impact solutions for human lifeways. So yeah, just really holding with a lot of reverence, and lifting up a lot of those case stories as elegantly simple solutions that still endure, right? Been meeting human lifeways for millennia, since time immemorial, and they are all the more important at this present.
I'm just going to drop in the chat of some of our alumni's projects and organizations. So because we're very much informed by what our alumni are doing in real life, in real time. So I'd say just as much as we're providing, like as much as like the lessons and the structure and everything, our alumni are informing us like every session by their feedback, what they share in office hours. So it's a continuous learning process, I'd say. And so I feel like that in a way of having like a like a talking circle, like is in a way like an indigenous practice, like our ancestors have done, like from time immemorial, instead of it being like a one-to-many, it's like we're sharing the lessons intergenerationally. So, and yeah, it's like some of the most inspiring things. I get so excited about our alumni and what they're doing, or just people in the community. So that would just be my ad. Great. So we're getting close to, we've got 2 more seated questions. One is it good for health coach solo practitioners? Kevin?
Yeah, I may have mentioned earlier that, yeah, some solo preneurs, sole proprietors of an economic endeavor providing service to the community do take the training, sometimes to grow the impact of their initiative, or with the aspiration to add team members, maybe in a cooperative formation or some other communitarian sharing kind of constellation. But even those who started solo and maintain solo, there's health practitioners, naturopaths, manual therapy, massage therapists, who have taken training. Health coaching, I don't know that I could be wrong. Maybe Sean, if you remember, I was just thinking of the alumni, if there's been a health coach, but coaching for sure, definitely, mental health coaching. And so what I would say, though, for anybody who's solo, there are in the training, especially in sessions 7 through 16, some nuts and bolts applications of principles that do involve teams. And so when you have a solo initiative, and we'll try and make sure rhetorically to contextualize it, when you don't have a team of people, sometimes you have partners or other stakeholders involved, even as a solo practitioner of one service. And so whatever we talk about is like, here's ways to deal with even decision making in your team. There's like a conceptual stretch of like, oh, that's how I could do engagement with my community or partners, even if my team is not like employees or worker owners. Or so there is some stuff that I'd say takes a little bit of a conceptual bridging to apply to solo, but much of the other content is directly applicable.
Yeah, and what I'd add to that, Kevin, is we focus on the business model being the same. So whether you're selling consulting or health coaching or whatever the service is, it's essentially this. It has the same elements to the business model, and that's what we're focusing on. That's kind of the business mechanics, right, that we're teaching as part of the MBA. And so it does apply to kind of whatever whatever industry, even product or service that you're offering. And so we're trying to offer this kind of like, whatever business you're running, these are some of the problems you're going to have to think about solving. And then, of course, if you're a small solopreneur, you might have different solutions that work for your situation rather than a large team or whatever, but they still kind of fit in the same framework. So yeah, so I guess I'm trying to a little bit de-emphasize, like we're not like teaching just like how to do one type of business, but more of like trying to give like a whole systems literacy for any type of business. What are the problems you need to solve, and then what are some of the patterns of solutions, and then kind of drilling down, and then how to adapt it to a specific situation is kind of like, that's some of the detail we go into with office hours and answering participant questions. So yeah, I guess the other thing to say is like, so if you haven't heard your specific business model or situation addressed in this, it's still relevant and applicable.
Thanks, Sean. Kevin, do you want to speak to Stephen's questions and then maybe wrap up with the scholarship question? Unless
Sure. Yeah, and if there's time for more, we have 8 minutes left. But yeah, I see Stephen's question in the chat. Was critical pedagogy part of your model from the beginning, and who brought that philosophy to lift? I think the Lyft team developed the training container from different perspectives and lived experiences, including familiarity with critical pedagogy, maybe more from kind of like bell hooks rather than Paulo, the pedagogy of the oppressed, or there are roots of the development, but instead of it coming directly from Marx or something like that, like it's a constellation of different perspectives from our own lived experiences of engaging in learning. In our resources, we reference bell hooks and oh my gosh, Carl Rogers as having people. Not Fred, respect, deep respect for Fred Rogers, but Carl Rogers, the psychotherapist and writer, has influenced the pedagogical approach, like how learning occurs, and we continue to learn. So, like, my favorite book I read over the last 12 months is Zach Stein's Education in a Time Between Worlds. Can't recommend it highly enough. But Phoenix also has a lot of experience in pedagogical kind of theory, but a lot of it's just adaptive to the practice of like what works for people. So we're not attached to, we have inspirations and influences, but we try and not be attached and continue to learn to yeah, so it's a great question, Stephen. So rather than it being like, oh, Phoenix with taking bell hooks as adaptations of pedagogy of the oppressed, then that's what's informed our critical pedagogy. It's not quite linear like that. It's more of a constellation of Lyft team members in our lived experiences of witnessing learning occurring and facilitating learning and sharing, and then seeing what works and then adapting and responding. So it does have inspirational influences and roots, but it's definitely not tied or wedded to any one pedagogical kind of frame. Is that helpful, Stephen? Just how's that landing for you?
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm a big Paulo Freire nerd. I'm making a website about that approach right now. So yeah, very cool.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. So we have time probably for 1 or 2 more questions. Oh, thank you so much, Kate. We're so excited to have you. So grateful to have you on this intro too. So feel free to drop any more questions in the chat, but the last one that we had submitted was, are there scholarships available?
Right. So like I think I may have mentioned at the beginning, our policy is to never turn anyone away for lack of financial capacity. So if somebody who wants to develop themselves, invest in themselves for learning and sharing what we can share and being part of this community and contributing, we don't want financial capacity to be a barrier. It's kind of antithetical to our values. So we do have ways to try and make the program more accessible, which can include like tuition fee installment plans, which can be adapted in terms of the amounts. There's some of those plans are available on the website. Some participants have, crowdfunded their tuition, and there's more formal ways that we want to support accessibility in the future. And some participants do some type of exchange of contribution or labor for tuition, which is a form of scholarship. And some people where there's none of the above work, but there's still a strong desire. Again, we've never turned anybody away. We just would engage in the conversation. So there's no application that I get. Maybe the gist of the question, if somebody say, do we have scholarships? There's no like formal form you fill out, or it's more of a dialogue to make sure that we're in our values of making this program accessible, and that there's like a sense of reciprocity, which does not have to take the shape of cash.
I'd say it's one of my favorite parts of my role is collaborating with folks on reciprocity and work trades. And I'd say that that absolutely influences the course because we have people who are outside of the program giving us their experiences on how we can improve. So it's there's all kinds of really the way I approach those work trades is like what inspires you, what makes you feel alive, and then how can that benefit the wider community? And so it's really, really excited about the projects that are taking place right now. But that's if you go that route, then we get to collaborate together on that. So wonderful. So those were all the questions that we had ahead of time. Is anybody, even if not questions, just as we wrap up, share any comments or thoughts before we end today's call?
No, just thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice. Thank you for what you're doing. Thanks for what everybody here is doing in the world and all your intentions. Really grateful for your presence here. And yeah, we value community. One of the reasons why we want to make this accessible is we've become or started as or become big believers in the power and necessity of community in this journey of transforming the economy.
Solidarity forever. Well, danke sejus ma'asi todos hamzu. Thank you all so much. Really grateful. We'll be emailing this recording later today. And yeah, I'm going to put my email address. And if you have any other questions, you're welcome to reach out to me and Kevin or Sean. We're here to, yeah, really just be in dialogue, whatever your choices are. Even if this isn't the right time, if you want to do it in the fall or just want to be in community, we're happy to be here with you and be on this journey towards the next economy. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day.